Hi, this is Adam Elio Berkowitz for Israel 365 News, coming to you from the Golan, the Golan Heights in Israel, where all the fun is. We're here today. We have a special broadcast. I had to actually remind people, in Israel, we don't really notice New Year's Eve. It just kind of comes and goes, unless you're in Tel Aviv, where I hear they celebrate it, though I've never seen it. So this is technically the end of the non-Hebrew year. So we're going to do a kind of a roundup of the three major subjects, and each of us will also talk about what we thought were the big stories that kind of got missed. So we're going to start off. We're very proud to be here with David Sidman, the managing editor of Israel 365 News. He's coming to us from Efrat, which is in Gush Etzion. It's about halfway between Jerusalem and Hebron. It's a beautiful place, as you can see. That's not green screen. That's as beautiful as God's land gets. We're also talking with Josh Wander, who is coming to us from the Mount of Olives, which, if you don't know where that is, well, that's a sad state of affairs. The Mount of Olives is right next to the Temple Mount, from which the world was created. It's a very special place. So, David, you've led us through a rather crazy year of news. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't kick off talking about our take as Israel 365 on the coronavirus thing that's actually hit almost every person in the entire world.
Let's remind everybody that this is a live stream on Facebook, on YouTube, on Periscope, and on Twitter, and people are able to write in the comments, and we will try to take live their comments as they come in.
David, what's your take on COVID?
Well, it's very interesting because there are two pivotal events this year that split nations into two. Well, let's just take America, for example. It's the elections and COVID. Meaning, most of America believes that the election was stolen from them with good reason. And I'd say about half of America believes that, I don't know about half, but a good portion of America believes that the whole push by the government to lock down and to wear masks and to social distance and to take the vaccine is all propaganda and a big hoax. Whereas the other half, let's say, obviously there's no statistics taken, but the other half says this is a serious disease, this is a serious pandemic. We have to social distance. We have to change our way of life. We have to get the vaccination. If you don't, you're putting people's lives at risk. So you have two massive events that are causing a serious schism in America. Also here, interestingly, in Israel, where the amount of people who want Netanyahu to resign is getting incredibly louder and louder. It used to be a couple of fringe kind of left-wingers who, just wanted to see him replaced. But after all the lockdowns, so many businesses and small businesses who used to support Netanyahu are now pitting against him because they blame him, and rightfully so, for causing all this economic devastation during the lockdowns. So I see those two events together in 2020 as two massively pivotal, unprecedented, historic events that are essentially turning major nations onto the brink of civil war.
If I can comment on that, from the outset, I remember when we first started reporting about it, we were reporting about parliament members from Iran were getting it and dying, and it was crazy. And one rabbi pointed out to me, I'm one of the great privileges of my job is that I get to speak to really amazing rabbis. He pointed out the name of the virus is corona. Corona means crown. And he said that this virus came specifically to take away the power of governments, to replace the whole concept of kingship and government, in order to prepare the way for, every darkness has a light. When we talk about New World Order, there's New World Order that's the power of darkness, and then there is a New World Order that's the power of light. And the new world order, the power that's light, is the kingdom of redemption, the kingdom of God. And this coronavirus is causing people to turn on the governments, taking away the power of the governments in order to pave the way for a new world order, a new government, which would be the post-Mashiach, the post-Messiah government of God. So we are seeing to bring this together, the two issues together, is certainly I think relevant.
All right, now to get a little personal, Eliyahu, are you taking the COVID vaccine?
Oh,
Josh,
honestly,
I know you're backstage. I'm going to ask you next.
Honestly, and I think you're the very fact that you're asking points at one of the major aspects
It's a
of this whole thing.
controversial topic.
Right. To be really honest and to throw everything on the table, my wife does not want me to. I'm 59 years old. I have type 2 diabetes. I'm definitely in one of the danger groups. And I still don't know. And it bothers me that I don't know. The fact that the hottest issue that has touched almost every single person on the planet and has engaged almost every single medical professional in the world, we just don't have information about it. We don't have good information, and we get information, we can't trust it. And people who say, oh, no, my information is, oh, it's definitely this way. That's not true. It's just been so politicized. I don't know, to be honest. I really don't know. I have a feeling that I'm going to be forced to take it.
We need to get Judy on the line.
No, we don't. We
Listen,
had an interview with
I am the only one here with my wife and I with a medical background. And my wife has already gotten it. I would have been first in line to get it. Would I have been eligible to get it? Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, I've already had corona. So therefore, I am on the bottom of the lists for getting the vaccine because we're not sure exactly how long the antibodies last for. But it's assumed at this point that it's going to last for a good 6 months. So there's no reason to rush. We want to get the people that are most susceptible to corona to get the vaccine first. That means the elderly, people that have immune deficiencies, the medical staff. Those are the people that should be getting it first. And I think that anyone who is not on board is listening to too many alternative news sources instead of looking at the real news. I don't want to call it fake news, but it's fake news. I mean, the fact is that this vaccine has been around. This type of vaccine has been around for decades. We know exactly what the side effects are for this vaccine, and we know that it is not dangerous. Yes, there are one in a million people that are going to have a serious reaction from the vaccine, but the amount of lives that is going to save is you can't now. What I will say is that we don't know, as the viruses historically are a lot smarter than we are, and they're constantly changing, and they're constantly mutating in order to get around anything that we can throw its way. So we know what's going on in the UK now, the new strain. So we don't know that the vaccine that we currently have is going to work for all the strains, but definitely for what we have right now, this is the best shot we have. And like I said, it's an unequivocal yes. I'm going to take it as soon as I'm eligible to take it.
Okay, so there is no way I'm taking that vaccine. There is no way on God's green earth I'm taking that vaccine. Just the fact that you say, well, we assume that immunity lasts 6 months. Well, that doesn't sound very scientific. And additionally, you say we don't know the long-term effects. Most vaccines take at least 7 years to test to see what the long-term effects is. This was rushed in, less than 6 months. The animal trials weren't published. I don't think you have to have a medical background to understand. And by the way, put the science aside for a second, just common sense. To me, the fact that the government is so gung-ho about this vaccine, the same people who ruin the lives of just about every small business person in the West, are now pretending like they care about our health. That makes me extra suspect of this
Do you
vaccine.
take other vaccines?
Huh?
Have you taken other vaccines? Are you anti-vaxxer
Yes.
of everything, or just this vaccine?
Just this.
Okay.
Like the other ones, I'm not. At least the other ones, they did proper studies with placebo, double. So the ones that do double-blind placebos. This was a big hack job, and we don't know what the long-term effects are, and we don't know if people who already had COVID are immune. We don't know how long that immunity lasts for. We don't know if the vaccine covers all the new strains that are going to come our way. We're just working on assumptions
No
here.
one knows that.
And assumptions isn't enough for me to inject my body with a chemical that has been tested in a very shady manner, very hastily. It's just not worth it for me to take the risk. And the fact that the government is threatening my freedom of movement if I don't take the vaccine makes me even more suspect of, what's really going on. Is this really just about a virus, or is it about something much bigger?
I don't want to make this into a vaccine debate, but all I could say is that I would recommend, just like anything else, don't get your information from Google. Get your information from professionals that actually have studied this, and that means not even doctors. Don't take it from your family doctor. Go find an epidemiologist, somebody who's their entire life has been studying this specific question, and ask them whether or not you should take this vaccine. And I'm pretty sure, I haven't done a study, I'm pretty sure that you will find that the vast majority, and when I say vast majority, I'm guessing 99 out of 100. If there's even one, I would be surprised, that says you should not take it. So again, speak to people that really know what they're talking about. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure that you guys don't know on that level. Most doctors don't know. Speak to an epidemiologist, consult with them.
So I would just like to, I agree with what you said. I would just like to add one more thing. Most epidemiologists don't know. There's so little known about this.
Right.
Find me an epidemiologist that knows how long your immunity for the COVID lasts for. Find me an epidemiologist that knows if this vaccine covers all the new strains coming out. Find me an epidemiologist that knows if this vaccine even protects us against coronavirus. Find me an epidemiologist who knows what the long-term effects are of this new technology that's in the virus.
Well, the first two questions, no one knows the answers to. The second two, they do. But again, let's move on to other subjects here. I'm sure.
I just want to point out, I had an interesting experience because I've been writing articles for a bunch of years, 6 years, I guess, maybe longer, about Geula, about the final redemption, trying to connect everything to redemption, and whenever I wrote these articles, people were like, "Oh, Elio, get real! You're going crazy here." And that actually has not been said to me for the last year. I was speaking to one rabbi about it.
I tell you that every day.
He said, "When was right? You say that." But you actually have a bigger. You're hiding, but we know what happens behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, you are further out there than I am. You live on Horace 18.
Behind the curtain.
This is the first. Behind the curtain is the glowing world of Messiah. This is the first thing I've written about, and we've been writing about it for a year. This is the first thing I wrote about that touched every single person in the world. I used to say earthquakes, volcanoes. There's an earthquake over there. There's a volcano over there. There's this over there, a scientific study, but this, you mention, COVID, coronavirus. This is how this has actually brought us together. And there are rabbis who point out that the Gog and Magog war, first of all, this could be a rerun of what a plague looks like, an actual plague. And the plagues of Egypt are supposed to return again before the final redemption, just like the plagues preceded the redemption from Egypt. There will be plagues that precede the redemption, the final redemption. And also, the war of Gog and Magog will not be fought like other wars, and the prophets knew it. They described things. The prophecies about Gog and Magog they're not like anything we've ever experienced. So it could be that this is actually part of the war. And there are rabbis who believe that. So we've actually, this is a major event that, you know, I watch movies now, or you see a person walking around in public and no one's wearing a mask. You're like, it has changed our reality in a massive way that we ain't going back. We are not going back. And like I said, this is preparing us. And the difficulty is seeing it. So that's how I've been reporting it.
So let's shift gears to the elections. I guess we'll start with the elections in the United States.
All the non-controversial topics we're going to take today.
Yeah.
Right. All of right.
So basically what you have here is the media pushing this, you know, they basically decided Biden was president before the count was finalized. And Trump is saying, wait a minute, there's all this voter fraud going down. We need to investigate it. And you have the other side that's trying to ignore it and whitewash it and say, yeah, there's no evidence of widespread voter fraud. And then Trump's side is kind of saying, yes, there is. You're just refusing to look at it. And I feel like it doesn't matter who wins the election in America. The fact that if Biden wins, more than half of America will assume that their democracy was robbed. And if Trump wins, the other half will assume that their democracy is robbed. So the United States is damned if they do and damned if they don't. And as an outsider looking in, it feels more and more like the United States is on the brink of a type of civil war.
How is this different, David?
Yeah.
Than when Obama ran against Mitt Romney, or I mean, we had this break, this rift in American politics has been going on for decades now. That there's half of the country is vehemently on one side, the other half is vehemently on the other side. I'm not sure that there are things that are getting more vocal, maybe even more violent, but I don't see the numbers changing.
Well, it's not so much about the numbers. It's about the behavior and the polarization that we're seeing in America. Never before has a president been so loved by one half of America and been so despised by the other half of America. It's the attitudes that are different. It's the
You don't
behavior.
think Obama was like that?
No.
Obama began it. He definitely began the process.
For a Democrat, Obama probably would be considered right wing in 2020. Yeah, Obama was hated, but not to the extent that the Democrats hate Trump, and he wasn't loved by the Democrats to the extent that people on the right love Trump. So the attitudes are much different now. The friction is much more polarized. The rhetoric is much more violent, and you can see it in videos. You wouldn't see violent marches yelling, Obama isn't my president, and you wouldn't see that with George Bush Jr. either, who used to be considered a big hawk. Should I go to somewhere with more light? I'm just worried about losing reception. Disappearing. Oh God. All right, I'm going to try to. I'm just worried about losing reception.
If I can comment on that,
we'll just take you off for a second.
If I can comment on that, first of all, this election was close. You had 70% of America voting for Biden and 65% voting for Trump. Yes, 135% of Americans voted. That's probably how the numbers worked out. There you go. What David pointed out about the polarization, that also very much connects with Geula. Rabbi Pinchas Winston, he explained to me that the end of days is kind of like a game of musical chairs. And the main thing is God wants to know, where are you? We know what the end is going to be. We pretty much know what the process is going to be, though we might not know exactly what it looks like, but we know what the end is. And God wants, it's not where are we going to end up? The question is, where are you when we end up there? So you have people, God wants to know where you're standing, and you'll have people when the Red Sea closes, people are going to be saying, "Oh no, I meant to come with," and it's like, no. You had all the chances. You sat there screaming that Bruce Jenner is a woman. You know, you sat there screaming that Joe Biden is clean as the driven snow. You sat there screaming that the Palestinians have been living in Israel for 5,000 years and the Jews never lived in Israel. You sat there screaming that. So guess what? Now we know where you're standing. So, yeah, see, we get some amazing comments. I keep the comments coming. I don't actually. Like we're looking at Cena Trover. My gosh, your comments are right on, and they're absolutely amazing. Yeah. So God wants to know, where were you? Where were you standing? Which side? So before you have the redemption, it's this polarization is a pre-redemption condition. We want to know, where are you?
And just a plug for Rabbi Winston, if you stay tuned in another 2 hours, we have the live webinar, our weekly webinar with Rabbi Winston. So if you come back in 2 hours, you're welcome to listen to his webinar and to
definitely
be in touch with him.
Definitely worth listening to. So
were we going to talk about Israeli elections?
Oh yeah. I just want to point out
which
that
one? One,
also
2,
America
3, 4.
and also Israel. Right. So I want to lead this off. Yeah,
we don't even have time, Elio. We don't even have time to say that it's fake and it's fin and there's problems with the election, because by the time we start analyzing the election, there's already another election around the corner. So we don't have all those problems that you have in the U.S.
Right. Okay. Also, before we leave the Biden-Harris thing, there's something about seeing current events through a prophetic lens. Kamala Harris. Her name literally comes from the word Amalek. Kamala is the same letters as Amalek, and her name Harris in Hebrew means destruction. Okay, Joe Biden.
Keep in mind, this is not a mainstream view.
Okay, but you know, you read the Bible and you're like, whoa, didn't they see this? What were they thinking? Didn't they see? It was so clear. Well, sometimes it's very clear in our days and we don't actually see it. The president elections in Israel, we're going through 4 elections. And what I want to say is, someone told me a story. When did I write this? June of 2019. That there was a Rabbi Kaduri, who passed away. He was one of the most prominent mystic rabbis in Israel. Everyone knew of him. And 40 years ago, literally 40 years ago, he was giving over a lesson, and someone asked him, how will we know when the Mashiach is coming, when the Messiah is coming? And he said, when there are elections and no government. And people were looking at each other like, maybe the rabbi's losing it, because when you have elections, you have a government. That's why you have elections. 40 years ago, that's what he said, Rabbi Kaduri. And I spoke to a man who was sitting in front of the rabbi when he said that. And his name is Rabbi Meirav. And that's what we saw in Israel. That's also what we saw in America, by the way, is that there were elections and no government. You know, and that's really the period of time before Mashiach. And like I said, the reason is to pave the way for the.
You mean no government? No government. There is a government. There's just no government. Okay. I mean, at least it's short-lived. It's a short-lived government, but there is a government. I would argue that this is definitely part of the redemptive process, because we need to have a situation in which you're going to lose trust in the current players, let's say, in order to move on to new players. And one of the things that we see in Israel is that historically, for the first many decades, 3 or 4 decades of Israel's short existence, the Labor Party was basically running the show. And in this coming election, according to recent polls, there's not going to even be a Labor Party. It's going to completely disappear. And likewise, the Likud party, which took over, which was the other major party, now is being split into many parts and is slowly but surely disappearing as well. So we see that these major players now are being changed for something else, and we hope that something else is going to be something that will be closer to lead us to the redemptive process.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what else is interesting is that, you know, it's kind of the boy that cries wolf. Every time there's elections, the left wing gets all excited that this is they're finally going to oust Netanyahu, who's been prime minister for what, like 15 years running. But this time it looks like it's really going to happen. And there's an actual reason and a basis in assuming that Netanyahu's era is over. And that is, of course, the current economic crisis from all the lockdowns that were overseen by Netanyahu, and all the businesses who were faithful Likud supporters now have an alternative with Gidon Sar, who's kind of like a better looking version of Netanyahu, I guess, for lack of a younger, better looking version of Netanyahu, for lack of a better word, better description. So that's something else that's very historic. This is no less historic than Ben-Gurion getting dethroned as he did. And like you said, that combined with the ousting of the Labor Party, this is going to be, and also if the entire election is done remotely, meaning there's not going to be any campaigning, no speeches, no addresses, no nothing. It's just kind of people online hoping that it's much harder to get your message across when everything is done virtually. So then to actually show up at events and speak. I mean, for every other election, every single person who's running, and someone who actually ran for the Knesset, I can tell you that every night you're busy going to events, talking to people, getting people on the street, talking to them. It's very important, the on the ground work. And now you're not going to have any of that in this election. So and also every election there are accusations of voter fraud, similar to America, where there's accusations of ballot stuffing. This time around, they are going to actually install observers with cameras into every polling station. So there's going to be a lot more transparency, a lot less campaigning, and we're likely going to see the two biggest players in Israel's history, Netanyahu and his Likud, and the Labor, basically taking backstage to other new parties, it looks like.
I think that point about labor, just to put that into context for the viewers, when Israel first began, it was the first right-wing prime minister we had in Israel was Menachem Begin. Before Menachem Begin, Israel was run by the left wing, and the right wing didn't stand a chance. And the right wing was very much the party. I think my understanding was it was the party of the working class, and what we're seeing is it's a sociological schism. And on one hand, yes, it's a political commentary, but on the other hand, when you read Tanakh, even when you read the Bible, the writings and the prophets, even in Exodus, when you're reading about what's going on in the desert, it's kind of like news headlines. These political movements, religion in general is semi-political. It's when people get together. There are a lot of things in politics that are expressed religiously. The Bible commands us to have judges and police. That's religious. It's political, but it's religious. The Bible commands us to have a Sanhedrin and not just a secular court. A secular court is against the Bible. Jews are actually not permitted to have a secular court. So these are all things that are expressions of our religious mission, our religious nature as the nation of Israel. So when I see such a drastic change, where, like you said, Josh, I think rightfully so, the major parties that started the country, it's like a person who comes back from America from 1776. He's like, where are the Whigs? What happened to the Whig Party? They're not around anymore.
WHIG.
Yes, WHIG.
Also
Israel,
WIG.
Israel is
the Whigs also.
Israel is changing its essential self, I think, through these politics. Hi, Dave. It's great to have you back again. And I think it has religious implications. It has spiritual implications. Which party is going to be the party to say, let's do our job. Let's take the Temple Mount. Let's make it a holy place and not a place that has, not holiness on it. Let's start relating to the fact that we are a Jewish nation. That party is, and we're moving in that direction. That's how I see it. We're certainly moving.
Sorry, what's very interesting is that Rabbi Kessin, a while ago, he said that Gideon Sar is going to be the successor to Netanyahu. Do you remember what I'm talking about? And he's going to somehow usher in the Mashiach. You have no idea what I'm talking about?
Well, a lot of rabbis have said that Netanyahu is going to usher in the Mashiach. The Chabad Rebbe said that as well.
No, he said specifically Gideon Sar is going to replace Netanyahu and usher in the Mashiach. Specifically, he didn't just say Netanyahu. He said specifically Gideon Sar. And now what's happening is this Gideon Sar character, for those of you who don't know, he's someone in the Likud. He used to be the education minister, serving under Netanyahu's government. He kind of split from Netanyahu. I don't know exactly what happened there. I don't know if there's any bad blood. But I think what's interesting about Netanyahu is that he's not going to live forever. And usually a leader of that stature would kind of groom someone who's younger, up and coming, maybe a little loyal to take his place. And Netanyahu hasn't really done that. He doesn't really have anyone who he's kind of coached and groomed to take his place should, God forbid, anything happen, or should he retire. It's always just kind of been Netanyahu, and he shuffles around all of his yes men in the Likud. And Gideon Sar was kind of like, okay, this isn't...
Maybe that's the secret to success.
Sorry?
Perhaps that's the secret to success, that he never had someone who could be a power that could actually run against him.
Right, but it's also incredibly selfish. Because if you care about the nation, you want a successor who holds your values and your ideals. That's why I think a kingdom is much better than a democracy, because a king has a vested interest in keeping his nation healthy economically and strong and secure, because he knows that in 50 years his son is going to be the one running the show. So he wants to leave his son with a strong nation, whereas in Israel, at least, a lot of these politicians just want to make connections so that if they are out of politics, they can become effective lobbyists.
What happens, David? What happens when the king tells you to get vaccinated?
I don't think it should be a decision that a king should make for his people. I think it should be an individual decision that everyone should make.
Well,
which is another
in a monarchy, that's not how it works. But okay, I want to say something that our listeners probably are not aware of. In elections, one of the big stories, I think, in American elections was all the what we spoke about, the accusations of corruption and falsification of voting. Now, here in Israel, unlike many places, it depends on the state and jurisdiction you're in the states. But many places in the states, you can vote, you can register the vote the same day. You can go in and vote. You can mail in votes that are not checked. The signatures are not checked. No one checks in ID in the United States. I believe in any state they don't have mandatory ID laws. Here in Israel, it's not like that at all. Here in Israel, everyone is automatically registered to vote. Anyone who is of age and has an a mandatory identity card, when they go in, they're checked on a registry. And there is it stops people from voting multiple times because there's only one time that person can vote, and they're checking a person's photo ID before they allow them to vote. So it's a very different system than you have in the United States as far as voter fraud is concerned.
Yes, but Israel definitely has its problems with voter fraud, specifically in the Arab and less so, but also in the Haredi communities where ballots are stuffed. The observers themselves are just as corrupt as those who are stuffing the ballots. So Israel is by no means immune from voter fraud, which is why I like that.
But every election, every polling station in Israel have representatives of different parties. And as far as I know, no one has ever been locked out like you see what happened in the United States. People have been locked out from the other party from going and monitoring the elections. That, as far as I know, is that I've monitored already many elections here in Israel and in the United States, and I've never seen anything like that. So
well, probably not, but
with the cameras now that are going to be set up, it's going to be hopefully even more secure than it was ever before.
Game changer. It's a game changer. And I'd assume you never monitored an election in an Arab village.
No, I have. Actually, I voted in an Arab village. Well,
that doesn't surprise me.
No, my team doesn't count.
What does that mean? 99% of the people that vote in my polling station are Arab.
Where do you vote? Where do you poll? Where do you vote?
In Siloam.
Oh, really?
Sure.
They are allowed to vote in general election in East Jerusalem?
The ones that are citizens. The citizens, you're right. Most of them are not citizens, so they're not allowed to vote in general elections. First of all, I wasn't talking about that. We also have elections, municipal elections that they are allowed to vote in.
I know they vote in.
As residents, but the ones that are citizens are allowed to vote in elections just like we are, sure.
Right. I didn't realize there was a lot of citizens in Siloam.
No, there aren't. If
I can raise another concern,
they're residents.
If I can raise another concern that I have about the upcoming Israeli elections, until now, we've had 3 elections that were during the administration of Trump. What people seem to forget is under Obama actually weaponized the State Department to try to get Netanyahu kicked out of office. The Democratic Party has a long history of meddling in Israeli elections, and especially under Obama. It was a movement called an organization called V15 that was specifically to get Netanyahu out of office. And so I'm really concerned if the next elections are held under Biden, God forbid, I would not put it past him, because he's trying to push the Iran deal. He's trying to re-jumpstart the Palestinian-based peace process, both of which were shown to be total fallacies, and this is the classic wisdom that these people make their hay from. And I'm really
Elio, coming in from C. True Stone from Twitter. He's asking, do you think Netanyahu has spoiled much of his popularity in how he used the lockdowns for his gain?
Absolutely. I don't know if he used it for his gain. It's hard for me to understand what he gained from the lockdown. He just lost a lot of constituency, but it will definitely, without a doubt, hurt him. And that's why I'm fairly confident that this time Netanyahu could be looking at a big humiliating defeat in March. And that being said, I'd like to go around the table, and you don't have to answer. Although I really want you. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you just want to answer? Stephen Barron's asking from Facebook, locking out. He's commenting. Sorry, that locking out poll observers did not occur on a regular basis in prior U.S. elections either. This was an unusually corrupt year, and I can totally agree with that. Although,
yeah, as soon as I understand social distancing, but as soon as the calls for universal mail-in ballots were put out, I'm like, there's a problem here, that only the Democrats are calling for it. The universal mail-in ballots, and that was the basis of the problem. They changed the laws pertaining to validating ballots and everything. They changed those laws, and it was all as a result of the universal mail-in ballots. Everyone said, "Oh, there's no fraud there's no fraud in mail-in ballots," and that was totally proven to be a lie. And no one's saying that now.
I want to mention that I think we're all dual citizens. I don't know. I assume that you guys voted. I voted in the U.S. election, and I did it through absentee ballots, which is permitted. In Israel, it's not permitted, by the way, to do an absentee ballot, but in the U.S. it is. But it got blocked. So right. So basically, I sent in my ballot in a swing state in Pennsylvania, and myself, there's actually 5 votes in my family. They were sent into Allegheny County in Pennsylvania, and they were received because we sent them through DHL, I believe. So they have a signature that they were received by the election department, and they still are not on the state's site that they have been received, and to this day we don't know where they went to. So there you go.
Crazy.
And there was a story we wrote about that not only, but they said, oh, there was a glitch. On one hand, the people who voted in Allegheny County, which was Pittsburgh, they all got these strange emails just like 2 weeks ago, was it? 3 weeks ago? And showing a big glitch asking
us to vote again, right? This is after the election, and I get an email. We get multiple emails from my family saying, "Okay, you're registered. Please come and vote," and sending us ballots in the mail. After the election, it was just unbelievable. They said it was a glitch.
So I started interviewing people in Israel from Allegheny County who voted in Allegheny County, and just by talking and chatting, I realized that all of them had the problem. None of the Israelis from Allegheny County who voted in Allegheny County, none of their votes were recorded as being received. They all, and one lady, she said she spent like $35 to mail in her ballot. There was 1,000%, there was fraud. There 1,000%. I spoke to the people. I know there was fraud. And I've never seen this before. And I think it all came out of universal mail-in ballots. So that's
we can a question here.
Time for another personal controversial question. Eliyahu, who are you voting for in Israel? But Josh, don't run away. I'm going to get you too.
Well, it's not so simple. I'm always reluctant to vote for Netanyahu. He's brilliant. He's great. He is not right wing. I am right wing. When it comes to, he'll make promises like he promised to annex Judea and Samaria. He doesn't come through. I'm always very, very reluctant to vote for Netanyahu for that reason. I was here for Gush Katif and for the expulsion from Gush Katif, for the expulsion of the Jews, the ethnic cleansing of Gush Katif. And a lot of the people who lived in Judea and Samaria felt that by not voting for Netanyahu, we were splitting our power up, and that gave more power to the left wing. So I'm reluctant to vote for Netanyahu, but he's really the only one. He's the focal point for the right wing, even though he himself is not right wing. I will say, through my interviews, I have spoken more and more with Moshe Feiglin. He's not running, is he?
No.
Oh, man. The man is brilliant. He's brilliant. I voted for him in the last election, or the one before that. I voted for him in one of the elections. He's brilliant. He's a man of high principles, very high thinking. He's all for Jews on the Temple Mount, and not from a fanatical. He's for. He believes in these things from an ethical point. I wish he was running. So I might have sidestepped the question. If it's I don't
make a decision. If you don't know, you don't know.
I'm still praying for Feiglin to run. Okay, put it that way.
All right, Josh. I think I know the answer, but I'm gonna ask you anyways.
I'm curious to know. Write it down on a piece of paper so we can just make sure that you're telling the truth here. I could say, first of all, I have no idea. None of us have any idea really who's running at this point.
You're not voting for Yamina?
None of us know who exactly is running and how the spectrum, the political spectrum, is going to look on election day. There's a lot going on every day.
Tell them about your background. You're a party member, correct?
I am a central committee member of the Jewish Home Party, not Yamina, of the Jewish Home Party, and
that's nice.
I am also a very close friend of a member of Knesset, Bezalel Smotrich, who I consider to be one of the few honest members of Knesset out there today.
He's from the Golan, you should know. He's from the Golan.
And I would say that at this point, What is clear is I'm not voting for Sar. I think that Sar has a background which is very concerning to me. He clerked, I don't know if you know, he clerked for a very left-wing Supreme Court justice here in Israel. His wife is a known radical leftist. As much as he shows himself to be the right wing, and the fact that he has libertarians joining him like Sharon Eskel and others is surprising to me. But what I can say is that as much as I have voted before on a number of occasions, especially when we're talking about when there was direct, people don't know that the election rules have gone back and forth, and sometimes you have voted for a party only, and sometimes you voted for a party and directly for the prime minister. So when I had the opportunity to vote directly for prime minister, I always voted for Bibi Netanyahu, because and I did this hesitatingly because on one hand I understand that Netanyahu has a history of doing things which are not. Like Elio said, according to right-wing ideals, he's given away Hebron. There's a lot of things that he's done that I do not approve of, but he's the best of what we have, unfortunately. And the fact that there is now they're ganging up on him in every direction because they smell blood in the water. And everybody's trying to take down Netanyahu. That's because Netanyahu represents, like Elio said, right-wing ideals, even if he may not be so right-wing as we would like him, himself, but he definitely represents the right wing. And unfortunately, everyone is ganging up on him in his legal cases, in politics. And I don't think he really deserves what is happening to him right now. I think that overall he's been a fairly good prime minister. I think under his reign, we have seen the economy of Israel just blast off. I mean, and speaking about libertarianism, for those that are libertarian in the room, he has privatized industries in Israel before. I don't know if you remember. I don't know how long everybody's been here. But a few decades ago, when I came here 30 odd years ago, this was still very much a socialist country. I mean, there was tons of things that were just regular. Everything was regulated by the government. Whole industries were regulated by the government. And he went and he privatized an enormous amount. The economy has been boosted incredibly under his prime ministership. And I think as a leader, again, I don't agree with all his policies, but as a leader, he's been a very good leader. And like I said, we'll have to see how it plays out as far as the parties are concerned. Whether Bezalel, where he's going to turn out. There's rumor that he's going to join with Ben Gvir and start a party. Who knows? I mean, we're months off from the election, and like I said, every day things are changing, so it's really hard to tell. But yes, I am a central committeeman of the Jewish Home Party.
Okay.
I hadn't considered that. That's very interesting. You're right. Bezalel Smotrich, he's also a person of very high, strong ideals. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, but if he's behind a bunch of fake right-wingers, then it doesn't really do us that much good. Meaning if he's number 4 in a party of 3 pretend right-wingers who are probably worse than Bibi, then it doesn't really help us much. So, Josh, could you see yourself voting Netanyahu, theoretically?
I could see a situation in which I felt that would be the only way to keep a right-wing coalition, that I would vote for him. I mean, I try to, when I vote, I try to balance everything, and I'm never voting for somebody I've not found somebody that I completely agree with everything he has to say. Like Moshe Feiglin, you mentioned, I happen to have thought some of his ideas were amazing, and other things I thought were completely off the wall. So I would never consider.
That'll be a different show.
Right. So I would never consider voting for Moshe Feiglin, although I consider him a friend. I think that you have to balance things and see when we figure out how, because again, most people probably are not familiar with the political parties here and how it works. You don't vote for
There's
like
more
a
than 2.
Republican.
Let's start with that. Like
right.
in America,
there are many parties,
Republicans.
And the way to become prime minister is by creating a coalition. And it's just a matter of there's 120 members in the Knesset, how you get to that magic number of 61 to create a coalition. And again, we won't know for at least a couple months now how that's going to play out.
Yeah, it's a lot of divvying out jobs. It's a lot of backdoor deals. And you're talking a lot of times about, you need a coalition with 7 other parties who have absolutely nothing in common with you. Like it's an S show.
And here even more so, I think that a lot of the parties are joining together in order to just gang up on Netanyahu. I mean, they're parties that would never consider being together, but because they just want to oust Netanyahu, so they're doing whatever they can in order to do that. And I can't imagine that they will be long lasting if that's their primary goal.
Well, one advantage to left wing.
It's another reason why we need a king. The king would straighten that all out, very much in a Gordian knot kind of way. The king would just come in and say, "We'll make organization
mandatory vaccinations."
Yeah,
if that's what it takes.
One thing about left-wing coalitions in Israel is historically, like they haven't really been able to get anything done because they've been too busy fighting each other.
But look at Gantz's party. That's unbelievable. I mean, it started off as, whatever they had, and they're all gone.
It's insane.
Right.
It's insane. And now this dog eater from Tel Aviv, Ron Huldai, is supposed to be like the next big thing to oust Netanyahu. The guy bragged about eating dogs. I mean, he's a real piece of work.
He's not a good man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
All right. I think we said everything
in our normal shows. And we haven't even gotten to the top 10. Let me just put it out that anybody wants to write in the comments. I'm really curious to hear what people in the audience think are the top stories of 2020. We just covered basically 2, which are the elections and Corona. But if you have other ideas of what the top stories are, we'd love to hear from you.
Or if you have ideas of what you want us to cover, write to us and we'll do a show on that. If enough people agree, we'll do a show on it.
I'd also like to hear about which are the top stories that didn't get reported. The way the media works these days, there were a lot of stories that were huge stories that just got stuffed under the rug and not reported. There are a few of my stories that I thought should have been viral, that the whole world needed to know. Maybe I'll talk about them in another show. Viral stories that the world should have known about that you just see the algorithms got messed with. So I think we're going to call it here. This has been a much longer than normal show. David, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I learned
this is what David does to us when we get online.
And you should know, there are news sources where you see that everyone is monolithic. Everyone believes the same. Says, yeah, why aren't? Oh, for example, something that the rabbis told me. Carlo said, why aren't the crooked politicians incarcerated?
They are. We're the only country that has put prime ministers and presidents in jail. So it's
one of the major stories that actually didn't get reported that I should have, and that's my mistake, is Donald Trump. There's the 7 Noahide laws. We were required, the nations are required to have courts of justice and to pursue justice. And Donald Trump, everyone talks about drain the swamp. He didn't even go after the criminals, and he just kept stumbling over injustice time after time. The whole Durham investigation, the whole Russia Gate thing, and now the elections. If it hadn't been for Donald Trump, who knows? No one would have ever thought that the elections were fraudulent. But because it's Donald Trump, he brought the nations to perform this incredible Torah commandment of pursuing justice. So that's another story that hasn't been. Anyway, now we can go on and on.
I think we should reconvene in 6 days.
Absolutely.
And see if the president is still Mr. Donald J. Trump, as I believe he will be. That's when it gets into the right-wing conspiracy series. I'm pretty sure that January 6th will be a surprise to everyone.
In 7 days, we have a whole lineup of amazing interviews that we're going to be posting on our site. We'll be putting it and on the Facebook news feed. really amazing speakers. I just basically called up every person who I really like, who I really respect, who has something really amazing to say, and said, come on, let's schmooze.
And if people have ideas of who they want to be interviewed, please write them in the comments. We monitor them all, and we would love to have anybody.
We're having fun here, and that'll just be more fun. Okay.
And for those of you celebrating the Gregorian New Year, it's not the real New Year, but Happy New Year nonetheless.
Not the Jewish New Year.
Merry New Year.
Which we have 4 of, but that's another show. Okay.
Thanks so much. Stay sober, stay safe, be blessed. We're here in Israel praying for you. Thank you so much for joining us.